Tesla vehicles and dealerships have been hit with a spree of vandalism and arson across the country.
It's really come as quite a shock to me that there's this level of hatred and violence.
Hello and welcome to the Nexus. This week we're looking at the violent attacks on Tesla. They're designed to intimidate the company's owner, Elon Musk, who is working with President Donald Trump to root out fraud and waste in the US government. Coming up in the program, we'll be asking a former FBI agent if these thugs are actually domestic terrorists.
They are defining it as domestic terrorism because that's what it is.
It's really about what Elon Musk is trying to do to the working class here in America.
Plus, we'll be asking whether it's right to compare Teslas to the Nazi-made VW Beetles of the 1930s. Some people are.
Now all of a sudden it's the evil vehicle that everyone now has to get rid of. It's a stunt that only the privileged can participate in.
Americans have a long history of using the power of their purse, of their money, to decide how they're going to reward and punish companies.
But first, a quick look at what's been happening in the US.
Vandalism against Teslas.
Growing number of attacks on Tesla vehicles and dealerships.
Multiple incendiary devices were found at a Tesla showroom in Austin.
They're burning down cars, they're firebombing dealerships, they're firing bullets into dealerships. Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful.
Do you consider this an act of domestic terrorism?
I think so.
Why?
I think that if and when they catch the people, and I hope they do, the good thing is they have a lot of cameras in those places. I think that you will find out that they're paid by people that are very highly political on the left.
It's domestic terrorism. It's disgusting.
And it's not just dealerships. The people who own the cars are also being threatened.
So I cracked my window and I said, what is the problem? And he goes, you need to sell your car. This is a Nazi car.
The guy who drew the swastika on the Cybertruck, the world's most scary hate symbol, gonna be found out to be a Jew? Oh wait, what's this? The owner of the Cybertruck is Jewish, making the irony extra thick.
When we came back, the car on this side was gone.
His car's built-in cameras recorded this man keying his car. He filed a police report and shared this video on social media. It's gone viral.
It's unfortunate that regular people like myself are getting drawn into this unnecessarily.
An online map decorated with an image of a Molotov cocktail includes personal information about Tesla owners, such as residential addresses. President Trump condemns this violence, and he will ensure that the harshest penalties are pursued.
Democrats own these cars, Republicans own these cars. These are criminals. They should go to jail.
So you're pissing off everybody.
We have many prominent figures on the left celebrating this new wave of domestic terrorism.
Vandalizing Tesla vehicles, new Tesla vehicles. Please don't vandalize. Don't ever vandalize Tesla vehicles. And so,
They've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So.
Governor Walz, unfortunately, is living a sad existence after his devastating defeat on November 5th.
There isn't more that Elon could do to turn off customers from Tesla. So if he's going to work in the government, I'm all for it. Work in the government. He's obviously doing a great job, right? And if he's going to work at Tesla, then work at Tesla.
Buy Tesla. It's unbelievable that this guy's stock is this cheap. It'll never be this cheap again.
Whoa! This is gross. A bit gross. You know, cabinet members should not be shilling for companies.
Prop up the stock in the company of the richest man in the world, y'all. That's what they're spending political capital on.
Okay, let's bring in our guest now. And today we are joined by Ken Gray, a retired FBI agent, and Patrick Crowley, a trade union leader who also organizes protests against Tesla. Welcome to the program, both of you. Ken, if I could start with you. The President and the Attorney General both call the violent attackers domestic terrorists. Do they fit that description?
So domestic terrorism is acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of criminal law of the United States or any state that appear to be intended to intimidate, of course, a civilian population or to influence the government, the policy of government by intimidation or coercion, or to affect the conduct of government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping, and occur primarily within the jurisdiction of the United States. So by that definition, these attacks on Teslas around the country are domestic terrorism.
Patrick, do you agree they are domestic terrorists?
Well, let's be clear. Any criminality should be prosecuted. But threatening people with domestic terrorism is not about the attacks on Tesla. What it is really designed to do is suppress dissent at all levels. Peaceful protests like the one I've organized are not domestic terrorism, but I think by injecting that into the conversation, they're trying to suppress dissent.
Patrick, do you condone their violent methods?
Absolutely not. And anyone who engages in violence should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But to throw the word domestic terrorism out there is really a way to prepare Americans to end due process for anyone who tries to protest against Elon Musk or the Trump administration.
Ken, your response?
So blowing up Teslas, setting fire to Teslas, shooting at Teslas, these are all acts of violence, not acts of speech. So to claim that these are acts of protest, that these are covered by the First Amendment is nonsense.
Patrick is trying to say, though, that the reason why the phrase domestic terrorism has been used is to stifle legitimate dissent.
That's exactly right.
I
And I think to try to conflate the two things is really a twisting of the words.
President Trump was asked who might be orchestrating these attacks. Can we just listen to that for a second?
The Tesla violence. Have you heard anything about billionaires on the left, whether it's Soros or somebody else? Have you heard anything about planning, coordination, funding for these attacks?
I believe that that is part of it, yeah.
Ken, is there any evidence yet that these attacks are coordinated and funded?
So there's a difference between the protests at Teslas that is being coordinated by Tesla takedowns all around the country and these acts of violence. So far, these acts of violence, there's been 48 of them so far, and those 48's investigation is ongoing to determine whether or not they are coordinated. Tesla takedowns, the part of the protests that Patrick was referring to, those are being coordinated by groups on the left. You see protests around the country. The website is up there for Tesla takedowns. If you go up on Blue Skies, you'll find information about that. So protest is being coordinated. However, the acts of violence, that's under investigation. That's why they put the I in FBI is to do the investigation.
Patrick, what do you make of those questions and answers put to Donald Trump there?
I think they're silly. You know, my protest was not organized by anyone but working people here in the state of Rhode Island. Teachers, firefighters, police officers, tradespeople, and Teamsters. Our members organized this protest. We didn't need help from anyone outside, and we didn't take our cues from anyone outside. The members I represent are very angry with what they see out of Washington, and it was us here in the state of Rhode Island that organized this protest, no one else.
OK, let's take a closer look at where these attacks have taken place and who's been caught so far.
Attacks against Tesla have happened across the US, from Boston to Seattle, all the way down to San Diego. Some of the most extreme include in Las Vegas, Molotov cocktails and 3 bullets were fired at vehicles at a Tesla collision center. Some of the cars were set on fire and resist was spray painted on the doors. Arsonists struck in Kansas City as well.
A KCPD officer was close by when he noticed smoke coming from a Tesla Cybertruck.
Authorities are investigating possible links to the Las Vegas attack. And in Massachusetts,
these Tesla charging stations in the town of Littleton were intentionally set on fire.
A total of 7 Tesla charging stations were left ablaze. In Tigard, Oregon, a Tesla showroom was shot at twice in a week. While in the Texas state capital, Austin, in the last few days,
police say multiple incendiary devices were found at a Tesla dealership.
And there have been a number of arrests. Also in Oregon, transgender activist Adam Matthew Lansky was charged with attempting to destroy Teslas with Molotov cocktails and shooting at a Tesla dealership. The suspect dressed in a black hood and cape during the attack. In Loveland, Colorado, Cooper Joe Frederick was charged for using explosives and arson at a Tesla dealership, and transgender woman Lucy Grace Nelson was charged after setting a fire near a Cybertruck and writing Nazi on a dealership sign. And in South Carolina, Daniel Clark Pounder was charged for arson, spray painting Trump and Long Live Ukraine, and throwing Molotov cocktails at Tesla chargers. All these suspects face a minimum charge of 5 years in prison, but those sentences could be up to 20 years.
Ken, there's some surmising on my part here, but looking at the suspects, they do appear to be from the far left, are they?
I believe so. I think that Again, there's 48 different cases. We've only seen a few arrests so far, but there does appear to be that connection between them, but that does not make it organized.
No. Patrick, would you accept it? They do tend to be from the left or far left, these violent attackers?
I really don't know, but if we're going to base someone's political persuasion on what they're wearing, what would I look like? I'm a man of the left, and I'm in a suit and tie talking with you today.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit silly to prejudge people based upon how they look.
To some degree, but then men dressing up as women tend to be more protected, more sort of vouched for by the left-wing parties rather than the Republicans, I'd say. So it's probably not a completely silly assumption to make. Patrick, you lead a union, but your protests are trying to hurt a company that employs 70,000 people in the United States. Aren't you potentially hurting other people's jobs?
No, because what we're trying to highlight is that the CEO of that company literally stood on a stage with a chainsaw, cutting thousands and thousands of union jobs across the country. We were at a school that is going to be subject to devastating financial cuts, where union teachers and union support staff are educating young children in the state of Rhode Island. So I think it's not really fair to try to put this as protest versus Tesla workers. It's really about what Elon Musk is trying to do to the working class here in America.
Can I ask you about the principle at stake here? Musk and his defenders say he's only trying to root out waste and fraud. Why are you against that?
I don't think he's trying to root out waste and fraud. I think he's trying to redistribute America's wealth up to the 1%, and he's using it by cutting working class jobs across the country. We've seen this time and again from the billionaire playbook. They want to try to say that any government job or any government program is waste, fraud, and abuse. They haven't been able to document it. They've embarrassed themselves with how they portrayed it. And I think working people like the ones I represent in Rhode Island are standing up and fighting back.
Oh, you say he hasn't been able to document it, but that's why he has the DOGE website and the DOGE Twitter page. And on the website, he says he's saved $130 billion, and you can check it line by line. He then says that it's about $800 per taxpayer, who can now expect to receive a check of around $5,000 if all goes to plan. So it seems like it's quite transparent and quite detailed.
I think his math is about as realistic as his rhetoric. There's been a number of corrections on the DOGE website. He's been embarrassed by trying to
That's a good thing. That's a good thing, isn't it, to make corrections?
It's a very good thing, but what's happening is it's the people that are correcting him. He's putting out misinformation, and it's being treated as gospel by certain members of the media, and it's taking working people like the ones I represent to stand up and make the corrections.
Well, the thing is, Elon Musk will say that the people who are most against what he's trying to do are the Democrats and left-wingers who are the greatest beneficiaries of the profligate spending of the US government and indeed the fraud.
I disagree. The people that are saying these things about him are the 700,000 postal workers that are having their jobs threatened with privatization. They're the millions of classroom teachers across the country who are seeing resources dry up. It is the people that are fighting back.
Ken, just a final question, and it's slightly off topic for a former FBI agent, but Patrick mentioned democracy and the people fighting back. Trump's administration would say, look, he was elected by 77 million people, and he was elected on the platform to tackle the waste of US taxpayers' money. Is that democracy in action or not?
When you see Elon Musk identifying people over 120 years old receiving federal checks, he's clearly doing the people's work here, stopping this kind of fraud.
Respectfully,
so I think
that
this
wasn't
is
true.
clearly an act of in favor of the U.S. people to stop this kind of fraud.
Patrick? And Ken, I think you know that that's been proven to be false, that it's an exaggeration, that it's simply not true. And that's why I say this is propaganda. It's not reality.
Ken Gray, Patrick Crowley, thank you both very much for your contributions today. Really appreciate that. Right, we're about to hear from a very funny man, David Shuster. He's a Democrat who says Teslas have become the equivalent of the 1939 Nazi Germany-made VW Beetle. Not his best joke. And he'll be going up against the indomitable Janelle King, who's a big Musk fan. But first, have a listen to a Tesla owner we spoke to in the United States, a surgeon who says he's been threatened for owning a Tesla.
It's just a car that I I had it for no political reason. You know, I had no intention to do any political statement. I got a flood of hate, like comments and death threats over the phone, via voice messages and online emails. This is the bad reaction affecting the entire Tesla community. In January inauguration day, it took way more aggressive turn. And I found a sticker on my Cybertruck saying Nazi. I got very concerned about that, and I decided to, get rid of the truck for the safety of my family and my kids, just because some radical liberals decided to tell me to sell the truck. That's not the right way to do it. I think every single American has the right to make any choice they want, any personal choice, any life choice, any political choice, and we have to respect that.
Okay, let's bring in our second panel now. And as I mentioned before, we have Janelle King and David Shuster. Welcome back to the program. David, especially, we haven't seen you since the election. I thought you were boycotting us. Anyway, moving on. Donald Trump, Musk.
You guys are boycotting me, but anyway, let's get to it.
No, not at all. You're always welcome. David, Trump, Musk, and DOGE claim to be tackling waste and fraud in the federal government. Why don't you believe them?
I actually do believe them, and I think most Americans actually support the idea of cutting down on waste, fraud, and abuse. But many of your viewers and a lot of Republicans don't seem to understand that it's Congress that has the power of the purse, that if Congress allocates money towards a particular program, Congress is the one that has to then vote to stop it. Elon Musk doesn't seem to understand that. If he was just doing an audit and just preparing a report agency by agency and delivering the results of his auditing report to Congress, I think every Democrat would embrace him. They would support him. But what Elon Musk is not allowed to do under the Constitution, the judges have reinforced this, is he's not allowed himself to actually implement the cuts. That has to go through Congress. And every time Elon Musk has instituted cuts at Social Security offices, at Veterans Affairs, at USAID, he is trampling on the Constitution. And I think, look, some of these cuts may be popular, but if they are, they should take them to Congress, let Congress vote on these cuts, on cutting down certain government agencies. It's not Elon Musk's responsibility. He doesn't have a duty. He doesn't have a responsibility. He doesn't have a right to make these cuts himself. He's unelected. He does not pass Senate confirmation. He should simply make recommendations.
I'll give you one example of a cut, which I don't know how that would fall under that category. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has returned federal funds to DOGE, essentially, or using the DOGE mechanism, that he wanted to return for many, many years because they had come with ideological strings attached from the Biden administration. Why would DOGE and Elon Musk need to go to Congress just to receive those funds back?
Well, it has to go back to the Department of Treasury. It doesn't go back through DOGE. If a governor or a senator or even an agency head doesn't want to actually physically spend the money that's been allocated to them by Congress, that's their prerogative within the agency or within the state. But they can't simply return the money to a non-elected Elon Musk and to a government agency, which was essentially created out of whole cloth.
You go on about him being unelected, but most of the officials are unelected, aren't they?
Yes, but most of them don't have the power. And in fact, all of them don't have the power to do what Elon Musk has been trying to do. They are not authorized. They do not have the right to close down government agencies. If you are a Senate-confirmed cabinet secretary, then yes, you get to make decisions, say within the State Department, about how you're going to spend some of the money and where your priorities are going to be. But that's because you've been confirmed by the Senate. If you're simply an advisor to the president, which is what Elon Musk does, and what his title is, he can only make recommendations.
Janelle, that's a great point, isn't it? Nobody actually, the Senate didn't confirm Elon Musk. Why should he have these powers?
Well, the Senate didn't confirm a lot of the bureaucrats that have a lot of powers, the powers that are pushing back on the efforts of the president. They're unelected as well, but no one says anything about that. There was a lot that was mentioned, and I do kind of honor to go up against Mr. David here because I do see a lot of his points, but it's a little misconstrued. The idea that DOGE is supposed to find all this fraud, send it to Congress, and hope that Congress does something about it. It's the same attitude of the Democrat Party to just kick everything down the road. We'll get to it next time. We'll get to it next time. While we have people hurting in other countries, we have people hurting due to this bad policies. Not only that, but Waste has been found in several administrations. This is not the first administration. I believe it was around 17 million individuals receiving, I think, a Social Security or entitlement checks a few years ago. Now we're at about 20 million people because it wasn't dealt with. So at some point, we have to jump on this and deal with it aggressively.
And David, just to pick up on what Trump and Elon Musk would say, the reason why the Democrats like to kick it down the road is because it's the Democrats who tend to be the beneficiaries of waste and fraud at the federal government level.
I think that's absurd. And the fact of the matter is the reason this is kicked to Congress is because that is what our Constitution requires. We may not like the fact that we have three co-equal branches of government, that Congress has the power of the purse, but that is what our Constitution says. And yes, it may be slow, and maybe it slows down the efforts to cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse. But, you know, there are some inspectors general, there are investigators that were within each government agency whose sole responsibility was to cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse. And the very first thing Donald Trump did when he took office was to fire 17 of them. So if I'm working at one of these government agencies and I want to identify to somebody, hey, look at all the waste and fraud and abuse in my department, there is nobody to go to now because Donald Trump got rid of the inspector general. And Elon Musk, again, he is required to abide by the Constitution. That is why the courts keep ruling against him.
Okay.
Mr. Shuster, once again, I think that, you know, he has a lot of faith in our government. I think he thinks that our government is already operating efficiently. The fact of the matter is a lot of the individuals that you're mentioning are people that were hindering some of the growth of the government. I hate that we're in this situation, but I hate to say it, but we're at a point where we either need to step up and do something, or we're at the verge of a collapse. I mean, we are really looking at the ending of Social Security. We're looking at all of these type of policies going away because of the fact that we haven't sustained them properly. So unfortunately, yes, we are in a predicament where Elon has come in. He has put his entire company, his wealth, his business, everything on the line to try to help save this country. And he's doing it by presenting this information to the United States president, and he's allowing the president to take action. He's not stepping in. Nothing Elon Musk.
Well, Janelle, if I may just jump in, I have to take this conversation into a different direction just for a second because we're running out of time. You mentioned he's putting his company on the line. That is Tesla. David, somewhat uncharitably, you compared Teslas to the VW Beetles of 1939 Nazi Germany. What did you mean by that remark?
Well, and I've also compared them to the Pintos, the Cybertrucks. Apparently, the Pintos were a Ford car in the United States in the 1970s that was stopped because when you rear-ended into them, they burst into flames. The Cybertruck has been found to be 17 times as deadly.
Yes. But in this analogy with Nazi Germany, who is Hitler?
Right. And the issue is that Americans have a right to spend money based on who they like and who they don't like. There were some Americans in the 1930s who didn't like what Adolf Hitler was doing across Europe, so they refused to buy German-made cars, buy Volkswagen, and eventually even buy Mercedes. There were a lot of families in the United States who wouldn't buy Mercedes cars for years after World War II because of what the Nazis had done. That is the American right. The same thing is being done with Tesla. Americans are saying, I'm not going to support the company of a guy that I don't like. The company, by the way, which only exists because it got $470 million in government subsidies when it was going bankrupt. Americans can say, I don't want to support this. I'm not going to buy this car. I condemn the violence against Tesla.
I take your point.
I support everybody who says I'm not going to buy a damn thing from this guy.
Well, I take your point, but the problem is when you compare the Trump administration to Nazi Germany and the Teslas to the VW Beetles of that era, it's a little bit risky, isn't it? We've just heard earlier in the program from a Tesla owner who said that he's had death threats, and it's comparisons like yours that might be making people get angry at him.
Now, I'm making the comparison between people deciding not to buy certain products. For example, in the United States, a lot of people boycotted South Africa because of what was going on in the 1970s and 80s with apartheid. Americans have a long history of using the power of their purse, of their money, to decide how they're going to reward and punish companies. That's the comparison I was making. Yeah, I don't think that we should compare the Trump administration and Elon Musk to Nazi Germany. I think that delegitimizes and takes away from the actual horrors.
That's a great point, Janelle. I have to bring you in here.
But
Janelle?
Americans do have a right to say, I'm not going to spend money on this particular company associated with Elon Musk.
Real quick, two things really fast. First, I love that you brought up Africa, and African leaders are also referring to the U.S. aid as a wolf in sheep's clothing. So we can talk about that another day. On top of that, when it comes to the Tesla cars, I find it quite privileged that Democrats can yell at all of us, scream at all of us for 4 years, telling us that we need to purchase electric vehicles, putting these cars on the road, giving them subsidies, giving them all these tax credits to have these cars. Now, all of a sudden, they're saying, no, guys, I want you to now blow up your cars because that's what we want you to do.
Janelle,
this is the
there are a lot
privilege
of
the
other
left, and it's absolutely
EVs other than
ridiculous.
Tesla. I'll give you a list, Janelle, of
It's
all the great
absolutely
EVs
ridiculous.
that are out there that are not
the
made
point
by
is,
Elon
none
Musk.
of this was saying, I didn't interrupt you, but the point is none of this was being said about Tesla when Tesla was now the car that was being pushed towards electric vehicles. No one was talking about it. No one asked what was the poor community supposed to do when they couldn't afford to fix these expensive cars that cost a lot of money. No one said any of that during the Biden administration. Now all of a sudden it's the evil vehicle that everyone now has to get rid of. It's a stunt that only the privileged can participate in. Only wealthy people can purchase a car simply to blow it up.
Thank you very much, both of you, for joining the program. David Shuster, Janelle King, thank you. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. Until next week then, goodbye.